Hey, what's up, everyone? Hope everyone can hear me. So, how's it going today? Hope everyone's doing great. Might be a little laggy today. We'll see. I have some issues with my equipment, but not too worried about it. So, let me know if it's too bad, if I'm dropping too many frames or anything like that. But thanks everyone for being here. So, yeah, kind of a hastily thrown together show. Just so people know, I'm only going to be at my current job for 2 more weeks. I'll be selling life insurance, will be my new job. If anyone needs life insurance, please let me know. But then my schedule should be more set in stone, and I'll be able to schedule some regular shows and things like that. As it is right now, things are crazy. I get called into work every day, things like that. So I apologize that I don't have the preparation that I normally do. I haven't been doing things like debates or things like that. Anyways, thank you all for being here. Hope everyone's had a great weekend. I got some stuff to talk about. If you'd like to call into the show, let me know. We could do it through Discord, or we could do it through kind of Google Voice. Either way, you don't have to use your real name. You don't have to use video. I usually prefer to have people that disagree with me. I think it makes the show better, but we shall see. So anyways, yeah, I went and visited some friends this weekend, and let me just, the first thing I want to talk about is kind of the cultural significance of what we see with this critical race theory movement and the movement to hate the United States, want to destroy its culture, its history, to be racist, to judge people. But hey, what's up, Frank? Thanks so much, man. Yeah, my great friend, Let's Be Frank on YouTube, just donated $25 to me. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Frank's going to be doing a live stream at 10 o'clock tonight with the great Sarah Corrier. So please, please, please check out his channel. It's Let's Be Frank on YouTube. He's one of my favorite people on YouTube. He's absolutely fantastic. He's done my radio show with me and very much appreciated. So I'll be sure to give you a shout out here as the show goes on. But thank you so much, Frank. Yeah, I could do a Q&A too. That's no fun. No problem at all, Jojo. So yeah, and Joe on DLive, I'm not surprised you didn't get a YouTube notification. I would say my time on YouTube's probably short-lived. I'll keep posting as long as they let me, but I keep getting videos pulled down. I keep getting live streams pulled down and things like that. I don't think I'm an offensive person. I don't swear very much. I certainly abhor political violence. I don't cheer for any sort of violence. I despise racism and focus on race from any direction, yet they still insist on pulling me down because I challenge kind of a narrative, particularly when it comes to things like COVID and Black Lives Matter. So, if you're on YouTube and you're following me, I recommend checking me out on dlive.tv at Normal America or at twitch.tv at Normal America with Rob Noor. Yeah. Thank you, Frank. Yeah, it's getting a little unruly. My wife is not loving it, so it'll probably be cut soon. I don't really make any decisions about my own appearance. It's all my wife's choice. So when it's time to cut my hair is when she says. So, anyways, what I want to talk about is kind of the cultural significance of what we see occurring with this movement to denigrate the United States and this racist idea of critical race theory that's being pushed in academia, and that's now what we see being pervaded through Black Lives Matter and groups like that. I always kind of reiterate what I think Andrew Breitbart said before me and said better, which is that politics is downstream of culture. And I talk about this a lot. While conservatives were worried about winning elections or, oh, we got to make sure we win this election so we can have people appointed to the courts that are more conservative and things like that. What we saw the establishment and the extreme left doing was winning the culture war. And now it's to the point where all of our major institutions are dominated culturally by the establishment extreme left. I ask people all the time that talk to me about institutional racism and things like that support Black Lives Matter. Name me one institution that's not dominated by the establishment left-wing rhetoric. Give me one. There are groups within that institution. For example, corporations could be considered an institution. Certainly there are, the MyPillow guy, he seems to be a conservative. But the vast majority of corporations are dominated by the establishment left-wing narrative. No surprise then that the wealthiest Americans tend to donate Democrat. How about the media? I mean, it's not even worth talking about. Clearly, establishment left-wing politics. How about academia? Even more indoctrinated than the media with establishment left-wing politics. How about Silicon Valley? Same story. How about Hollywood? Same story. In fact, it used to be that there was a legitimate gripe to be had, I think, that churches and religions were dominated with the Republican ideology, for better or worse. Now, obviously, as a Republican, I think that that's a good thing. But I understand people saying, oh, when you go to church, you're hearing one perspective of things. I'm not talking about cultural issues and things like that, but let's talk about like economic issues and so forth. Certainly, there is a Christian case that could be made for having more taxation or less taxation. I'm not making a stand on, you won't hear me cry that. Now, when it comes to other things that we see that are being advocated by the extreme left, such as their normalization of pedophilia and things like that, it's truly abhorrent, disgusting. I don't know how anyone could vote for someone like that. So clearly you would expect religion to be against that. But even increasingly so, we see a lot of these outspoken religious leaders that come out and they're, spreading the mantra of Black Lives Matter. So really, almost all of our institutions are completely dominated, and the ones that aren't completely dominated are trending to going to the establishment left-wing politics. And it doesn't matter what elections you're winning if culture is totally controlled by the other side. It won't matter. For example, because we have a dominated culture in these institutions, even if we could push for laws, for example, let's say that a law would pass that would say something like it is illegal and it is up to a year or 2 years in prison if you, for political reasons, block traffic and threaten people in traffic. We could pass that law as conservatives. Theoretically, that's something that could happen. Who cares if the prosecutors just let them out? Who cares if the mayors tell the chiefs of police in their town, well, don't arrest anyone? Who cares if there's no bail and people could just walk free? It doesn't matter what the political motivation for the law is. If the culture is completely dominated by the other side that says, no, we're for political terrorism, we're for violence and intimidation being allowed to use to go after the people we dislike, then it doesn't matter if we control the election. If we win the election, none of that matters. That's why, and then obviously elections will be swung as culture is controlled. That's why I think the Republicans make a huge mistake giving up on the culture war. That's why you see so many young people, though I do think you're seeing the generation below the millennials start to understand how insane this extreme left-wing rhetoric is. And I'll give some suggestions as to what we on the right could be doing to win back young people. In short, we're the party of fun. We're the group of fun. We're not going to be here to judge you for a dumb joke you told when you were in high school. We're forgiving. We say, everyone does things. And I try to practice what I preach as well. I mean, you'll be hard-pressed to see me on the left or the right judge someone for a joke they made and say that that should lead to their termination. And just some people on the left that I've stuck up for and didn't want to lose their jobs over certain incidents. Al Franken, Ralph Northam, Kathy Griffin, and others. Now, I despise all three of those people. But when it comes to the incidents that there was so much outrage over, I thought that an apology was fine. Or I didn't see enough proof that they should be fired because of that. So there are ways we can win back young people, but I digress. So let me talk about this. One of the things that I think it's important to understand is people think that I rant and rave a lot about politics, and it's true. I definitely do rant and rave about politics. And it might seem like I'm an unhappy person. Jojo, who's on YouTube right now, Jojo's my brother in real life. I think you could ask him. I'm one of, and anyone else that knows me in real life, I'm one of the most fun-loving people that you'll ever see. I'm happy. I'll complain about politics and stuff like that, but I'm a really happy person. Just this weekend, I was spending some time with friends in Ohio, including one of my better friends who's done the show with me, who is as extreme of a left-wing person that you could imagine. We had a great time together. We just chose not to talk about politics. Had a lot of fun. It was a blast. I look forward to seeing him soon again. He's one of my best friends. I think he's totally wrong when it comes to politics, and if we ever talk on this show, I'm sure it'll get very heated, but we're still great friends. But I've learned to separate this is kind of therapeutic for me. I get to come on here, I get to vent, I get to talk to people, I get to argue with people that disagree with me, I get to talk to people that agree with me, and then I'm kind of done. You know, I still volunteer for the Republicans, I go out to Republican events, I volunteered for Trump's campaign, I try to do other things to help politically, but when I'm doing that, I'm doing politics, and when I'm not, I try my best to not be doing politics, so I don't become miserable. This is even, not only is that important to not get constantly bogged down in this stuff, but it's probably more important for other people that don't have a way to vent like me. And so, traditionally, what we've used to get away from not just politics, but any difficulties in our life are entertainment. And the fact that entertainment now is so indoctrinated with this extreme and establishment left-wing politics, it becomes difficult to, if you don't want to be inundated with that stuff, to find an escape from it. And so, whether it be, you know, I talk about this all the time. You come home from a hard day of work and maybe your politics aren't Republicans or Nazis. And, you know, maybe Trump supporters deserve to die, as I saw a couple of my friends saying this week on Facebook. Maybe that's not your politics. Maybe you're not in that kind of bubble that's allowed to voice their opinions all day, every day like that and get away with it. So you get home and you're just tired of hearing it and you're like, hey, I'll click on some late night comedy. Oh, look at this, Conan O'Brien. Left-wing bashing Trump the whole time. Well, I'll switch over to Stephen Colbert. Oh, left-wing bashing Trump. Well, I'll switch over to Jimmy Fallon. Oh, left-wing bashing Trump. Okay, enough of that. I'll turn on some Hollywood flick. Oh, it's just a bunch of people. Either the message in the movie is just this extreme left-wing politics, or the actors are backing it in some way, so it's hard to get away from that. Okay, I'll watch a sporting event. Oh, it's all dominated by it. And that's what I wanted to talk about, was the NFL. So baseball is probably my favorite sport. I have not watched one baseball game this entire year. Not one. Which, it also helps that my team, the Pirates, are like having one of the historically worst years ever, so it was easy not to watch. But I haven't watched my favorite sport because the politicization of it was just too much. Whether it be through COVID or through the Black Lives Matter stuff, it was too much. By the way, let me say this real quick about baseball. For all of the people on their moral high horse about, well, it's free speech. They could kneel for the anthem if they want. They could say what they want. And if they want to protest, but it's free speech. I don't disagree, by the way. I've defended Kaepernick's right to kneel ever since he did it. I think he's a scumbag. I think that he's lied to try to go with the flow to achieve popularity, and that he wanted to become this sort of martyr figure. He originally said that it was because he refused to stand for the flag of a racist country. That's what he said. And then the media switched that into, oh no, he's not criticizing the country. He's not denigrating the troops. It's about, you know, just wanting to bring attention to the problem of police brutality. That's not what it was. That's not what he said. And then, of course, Kaepernick got the PR message and went along with it. But we can see that he's changing his tune now. As support for this, the United States is an evil, racist country, has increased. Now he's back on the original bandwagon, which shows you the true sign of a coward. someone who's, even if I disagree with you, if you're willing to stand by your convictions, that's one thing. If you have to be wishy-washy because you're trying to just find out what's the most publicly acceptable message, you're not a martyr, you're a coward. And that's exactly what Colin Kaepernick is. But here's a little known story you probably didn't know about. 2016, 2017, there was a backup catcher, maybe for the Rays. I can't remember the team. His name was Steve Clevenger. And not a very good player, like a journeyman catcher, I believe. He tweeted out in response to Black Lives Matter rioting and things like that, that they were a bunch of animals that deserved to be imprisoned. He was let go by MLB for the remainder of the season. Now, where's the MLB that, we appreciate free speech and people, wanting to speak their mind? Oh, until someone goes against the orthodox establishment left-wing narrative, and then they're not allowed to speak up. We saw the same with the LA Galaxy player that was let go. He didn't say anything. He was someone, I believe, was born in another country. He's playing for professional soccer in the United States. His wife tweets out some harsh words about the rioters. He got fired. He was forced to denounce his wife and then was fired. So this idea that these leagues are all about free speech is garbage. That's not what they're about. So I would not have watched the NFL, is a long-winded way of going into it. I was not going to. However, two things occurred that made me watch some games. One is that I was involved in some fantasy football drafts. I still like doing those drafts because that's a good way. Most of the people that I'm in fantasy football drafts with, I literally have not seen or talked to since COVID began. And so, with finding out that I'm having my first kid, it was kind of cool to meet some of these people and do the draft in person. And they were like, congratulations. And that was the first time it hit me like, wow, we're 5 months pregnant and I haven't talked to these people, other than a Facebook post or two. So the just coming together, that was one thing. To me, it's a game. It'd be no different than playing Dungeons and Dragons or something. I don't care about the actual players, just the stat lines. I don't care about the games. I'm not going to watch them. However, the fantasy football draft that I did, and I went to visit my friends, they were watching football at their house. So it's just something to talk about that wasn't politics. And so I'm not going to tell them, sit with my back to the TV or something. So I did watch some games. And then the other thing was, and this trumps everything else, one of the gentlemen that I take care of that has developmental disabilities absolutely loves football. So I'm going to watch the game with him, regardless. And that supersedes anything else, obviously. I'm not going to leave my kind of protest of their actions culturally and politically negatively affect the gentleman that I'm taking care of. So thank you, Joe. Thank you for those people. I'm trying to read the chat here. Gray, thank you on Twitch. What's up, Joe? TV's like 100% propaganda. Lion Dogface Pony Soldier says UFC. Yeah, I will watch the UFC. Dana White is not only a Trump supporter, but more than that is kind of apolitical when it comes to his sport. He's not pushing out political messages. He just lets the fighters go fight, which is great. Yeah, YouTube's definitely upping their censorship. So you probably, if you're upset with the NFL, you probably didn't watch it, or maybe you did. So I was interested, because I was going to watch it, to see how they were going to handle this situation, because the word was from the Chiefs-Texans game on Thursday, which was the opening, that it was down, the viewership was down almost 20% from the year before. Now, I want you to think about this number. First off, I never know how they measure this and whether to trust them or not. So please take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt. But I do feel that viewership would be down. If that number is remotely true, it's down 18 to 19% opening day. And think of the teams that were playing. You had the Super Bowl winners, the Chiefs, who have the most, what's the word I want to use? Probably the most high demand player to watch, Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback for the Chiefs. Which, again, I'm not talking politics here. I understand, the kid is amazing to watch play. He is skilled. He's an He's the type of player you want to watch. It's like, wow, he did some crazy. So it wasn't like you had two bummy teams playing. This was probably the team people want to watch the most. And it's during COVID, which means people are desperate for some sort of entertainment. They're stuck at home. And even with those two factors, it was still down allegedly 18 to 19%. I'm now reading that the Sunday games were down about 20% from the opening week the year before. If 1 out of 5 people that watch the NFL aren't watching now during COVID, the league's in a lot of trouble. And I hope it is. I hope that it collapses. I really do. That's what they deserve. I would be totally fine with it. However, if people choose to keep watching, not my business either. You know, I'm not going to like actively sabotage. I'm just going to say I'm not going to watch. That's it. So I watched the pregame going into Sunday, and it honestly was worse than I imagined. Believe it or not. It really was. I expected them. I knew they would give some Black Lives Matter stuff, and they were going to talk about, you know, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Jacob Blake. I knew that there would be some level of that. But the indoctrination that I saw was truly pathetic. The worst thing I saw was, I think, what network would I have been watching? Fox, I think. So they have their kind of, if you've ever watched NFL, this is kind of how it goes. Like before the games, they'll have kind of a national panel of like, you know, 5 guys. And you got your guy that's like your, you know, oh, this game's going to be very exciting. You know, we have the Chargers versus the Titans here, and it'll be an exciting game, you know, new quarterback or whatever, and let's see. Now, what do you think? And then the other 4 people are usually former players or coaches. And they'll be like, oh, you know, my angle is I'm looking at these new quarterbacks, and, you know, that's the way it goes. So they do this panel, and the first person on the panel was Michael Strahan, who's a black guy who I think I always thought was an entertaining guy. He took over for Regis on, and so it used to be like Kelly and Michael or something, I don't know. But he, like, someone who's a great talker, like he's a persuasive speaker, he's entertaining to watch talk. And I didn't get to hear much what he was saying, but he was giving his Black Lives Matter spiel. The next person was Howie Long. Howie Long, you know, he probably retired football in maybe the mid to late 90s, but he's been doing the coverage of the games like this for decades. Happens to be a white guy. It was painful to watch this guy. You know, he's like, oh, I played football for like 12 years or whatever, and I was in a locker room with predominantly black people, and, you know, I'm ashamed to say that I thought I understood, you know, this country because I worked with black people, but now I realize kind of how racist things are, and, you know, I'm ashamed. And then the next person's Terry Bradshaw, you know, old white guy, used to be the quarterback, still, oh, yeah, I'm ashamed, racist country, systemic racism, yeah. It was just everything. It was inundated. Systemic racism. I got to watch the Ravens, the Browns. That was the game we were watching. I got to watch the Ravens predominantly. I think all of them stood for the black national anthem. And then many of them kneeled for the national anthem. And it was just said through all the commercials and through all the speeches throughout. It was said without any pushback whatsoever that our law enforcement's systemically racist. That's it. There was no pushback. There was no other side of the argument. It's systemically racist. It's that simple. It's not accidental that they've gone after the NFL. Now I have a lot to say about this, and I'm scatterbrained, so I do apologize for that. And I'm sorry if I'm not getting all the chat here, but I will try to go back and hit some high points on the chat. I have this argument with people all the time when I do these debate panels and people on the left where they make this argument, which I don't even understand what they're trying to prove. But when I talk about the ideological bent of all of these institutions, such as the mainstream media, academia, entertainment industry, what they always tell me, as if this is some sort of defense, they go, well, it's all about the money. So it's not that the media is left-wing. They're just predominantly left-wing because that's how they get clicks and money. It's not that Hollywood's left-wing. It's just they pretend to be left-wing because that's how they get clicks and money. And I'll say all the time, like, well, that's not true, because we can see there's thirst for right-wing entertainment. For example, the show Last Man Standing. I've only watched an episode or 2. It seemed marginally funny, but it wasn't like Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm, shows that I think are hysterical. Yet its viewership was through the roof. The same with the Roseanne Show. Because there were so many right-wingers that are like, I've just given up on entertainment. When they see an entertainment option that they're like, hey, this leans politically more towards me, because they're so few and far between, people eat it up. So, for example, if you're, like, Fox is becoming more left-wing. If you were CNN, though, and you see that MSNBC's kind of basically doing what your network does and beating you out, wouldn't you be like, well, the heck with it then. We'll bring on 50% Trump supporters. And then we'll have Trump supporters scream at Biden supporters, and that'll be good television. We'll do 50-50. Yet they don't do that. If you're the Washington Post, why would you do the same thing as the New York Times? Why is it that 95% of media all goes in that direction? No matter what you think, there's a big portion of this country that doesn't lean that way politically. Even if you think the majority of even if you think 60% of the country leans that way. Certainly 40% doesn't. And given even beyond that, then wouldn't there be room for independence in media? Right? I mean, there's a lot of people that don't like the Republicans or the Democrats. Yet there's really no network that caters to that. I would watch that. So the idea that it's all about clicks and stuff, it's not true. But even still, so, okay, and? Does that make it any better? It's still indoctrination of the people, but it's for money instead of ideological reasons. But another pushback to that would be, if all of these athletic organizations start to lose 20% of their viewers, why are they doing this if it's just about money? If it's just about money, they would have just avoided the issue. And that's right, Rational. The reason is it's not about money. That's part of it. It's a big part of it. But it's also about controlling these institutions. This is exactly what we saw with the Great Leap Forward and Mao, with the Soviet Union. You need to be crushed every day. All happiness needs to be sapped from you. COVID's gone a long way in doing that. It's made people miserable. They want you to have no happiness whatsoever. No escape. Everywhere you turn, they want it to be indoctrinated in your head. You're evil. You're responsible for sins of your forefathers. Your country is horrible. Your country's evil. Your country's racist. You're responsible. You're privileged. You're a terrible person. You're a Nazi if you don't agree with us. You're a racist if you don't agree with us. The violence is okay. The riots are okay. It's necessary. You can't go to church. You can't go to your work. They want that in your head 24/7. That's how they get power. Hopefully I get to it, but there was an article, an op-ed in the Atlantic that said exactly, like, sometimes people get upset when they hear these mainstream people say things that are truths, but they're just repugnant. I don't get upset because I know this is how the mainstream Democrats are thinking. Not everyone, not my friend that I hung out with this weekend, not many people that I'm friends with that are left-wing, that support Black Lives Matter and stuff like that, but the people truly in positions of power. I know how they think. And so this article in the Atlantic said, listen, if you're a law and order Republican, you should still vote for Joe Biden. Because do you really think that Joe Biden supporters aren't going to freak out and riot and burn the country down if Trump wins? That's what the article said. Just like I've been telling you for months. This is the plan. This is the deal that the Democrats are offering you. Nice country you have here. Be ashamed if something happened to you. We'll burn it down. We'll cause lockdowns. We'll cause economic destruction. We'll cause wildfires. We'll cause riots and burning down cities. If you vote for us, it'll all go away. For now. As long as you keep voting for us for the rest of your life. However, the next time you don't vote for us, it'll be 10 times worse. We'll do it all over again. It's mafioso tactics. That's what they're doing. It's terrorism. And someone in the Atlantic is like, yeah, Republicans, if you want to be safe, vote for the terrorists. If you want ISIS to not attack you, just put ISIS in charge. Then they don't have to attack you anymore. If you want Biden voters to stop burning down your city, well, then vote for Biden. Then they'll stop burning it down. That's the deal that's being offered. Again, I'm not saying that that's what every single Democrat's saying, but that's what the group in charge is offering. And so going after a place like the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NHL, Hollywood, they don't want you to have an escape. They want you to be totally miserable. They want you to be like them. Do you see these people? Just watch a Black Lives Matter protest. They are the most miserable, funless, humorless scumbags walking this earth. Terrible. Again, not all of them, but the ones that are in charge of that movement. So yeah, if you didn't watch the NFL, you didn't miss much. But the indoctrination was worse than I even thought it would be. Other stuff worth talking about. So I did a car. I'm going to stop doing the live streams in the car. I think I'm just going to record while I'm in the car and then upload it later. People ask why I don't do that anyways. For some reason, my iPhone was having a problem recording a video and uploading it to YouTube, but I'll make it work. Because the live stream, I got... Welcome to rural Pennsylvania. There's so many spots without reception, so, you know, the quality's not that good. I wanted to talk about the 2 cops that were shot in Compton, LA. I don't know if it was specifically Compton or not. That's what I talked about on the ride to work here Sunday night. This is not, if you didn't catch that video, I'll just give you my highlights here. This isn't surprising. No one should be shocked by this. It will continue, it will get worse until Biden wins. Or until Harris wins. The Harris administration wins. Also, I am, and I hope that I'm wrong about this, I am predicting that Biden-Harris will win. Harris-Biden. Or Harris, whoever replaces Biden. Because I still don't know that he'll make it. I don't think that they'll legitimately win. But I think that they'll, it's already said that they've hired like 140 lawyers. It'll go to the Supreme Court. John Roberts will vote Democrat. So they're already gaslighting us what's going to happen. It will appear probably. Now, anything could happen, obviously, but it'll probably appear as if Trump won election night. And then they'll say, no, Trump won what? Trump won by 2 million votes? Oh, we found 2,000,001 ballots. Oh, and they're all for Harris. And John Roberts will go, yeah, looks good to me. Oh, what's that? You want to go to church in Nevada? No, you can't. But you can go to the casino. You know, that John Roberts. That Supreme Court. Yeah, Nick DiPaolo is hilarious. I agree. But we'll see. Anything could happen. I was shocked that Trump won in 2016. Again, not because I didn't think he had enough votes to win, but because I thought they would cheat. But I'm cynical, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyways, that's what's going to happen. What we see, these attacks on cops, the burning down cities, it's not going to get any better. You know how I know? Here's why. Let's just talk about a completely different situation for a minute. Remember the 2008 financial crisis, where basically you had a bunch of bankers that were packaging subprime mortgages in with good mortgages. They were basically intentionally giving mortgages out to people they knew would never pay them back. Then they packaged those crappy mortgages that they knew would never be paid back. They packaged them with good mortgages, and then they sold them to people that were investing, like your 401k. So you assume, oh, I'm getting an A+ option here. The people that got all these mortgages will pay them back, and then my investment will pay off, and when I retire 40 years from now, things will go really well. Only we found out that it was a scam, that these mortgages were intended to never be paid back. They were intentionally given out at ridiculous rates so that but to people that had almost no principal and were not making enough money to even pray to pay this back. But by the time it was found out, the people that originally gave the mortgages and the people that repackaged them, they made out like bandits. And those that didn't as a result of the crash were bailed out by U.S. taxpayers. Now, I said back then in 2008, 2009 that nothing would change. And it hasn't. And you know how I knew nothing would change? This is going to blow your mind. You ready for this? This is just how much of a genius I am. See, no one could come up with this but me. You ready? You know how I knew it wouldn't change? Because there were no negative consequences. Only a genius like me could figure that out, right? No. Everyone knew that. If you allow a bunch of corrupt bankers to rob this country blind and average Americans to pay the price through their 401k and through taxes, they're going to do it again. Unless consequences are faced, they'll do it again. If you allow rioters to burn down city after city and then they get arrested and immediately released, like in Portland, they're going to do it again. Period. And so these riots will occur nonstop. Why? Because, now I will say, this is something that I said, that I think that I was the first person I heard say this, and still you don't hear many people say this. The problem with Black Lives Matter and Antifa isn't that there's a lot of them and they're violent terrorists. That's a problem, but that's not the real problem. The real problem is they are backed by institutional power. That's the real problem. So, for example, the KKK is as heinous as an organization. They're scumbags, right? What's the difference? If the KKK goes down and starts burning down a community, there'll be 1,000 cops and National Guard people like that on them. No questions asked. All of them in jail. Everyone will condemn it. On the left, on the right, everyone that's in the objective conversation that's not just an extreme racist will condemn it. They'll say this is disgusting. You won't see Republican councilmen, Republican media people, Republican senators and representatives. You won't see them praising the KKK that did that. You won't see them starting bail funds to bail out those KKK members that were burning down cities. You won't see any of it. And therefore, we recognize, because there is no institutional or cultural power with the KKK, they're a joke. Now, does that mean a white supremacist can't still be dangerous? Of course not. I would never say that. I'm not the left. I'm not the one saying, oh, you can't be a racist unless you have institutional power. The irony about those people trying to change the definition of racism is, arguably then you can't be racist if you're white, because what institutional power do you have? They'll say, oh, but most people in power are white. Maybe so, but they don't view themselves as an average white person. They can't wait to virtue signal how terrible white people are. Again, and it goes back to this. If all of our institutions are either pro-Black Lives Matter or are virtue signaling to Black Lives Matter, and you say you can only be racist if you have institutional power, then how could anyone be racist towards Black Lives Matter if they control all the institutional power? Now, that's why I reject that. You could be racist without institutional power. But there is truth to, there is more of a problem with racism that's backed by institutional power. And so what we see with Black Lives Matter and Antifa is, you do see the vice president and even the president having their teams, or the vice president herself, bailing out violent rioters. You do see city councilmen, when cops get shot, saying, good, this is the first step in a revolution. You do see professors saying, good, go out and murder Trump supporters. You do see city councilmen saying the chickens have come home to roost when 2 cops are shot in Compton. And it's allowed. Their movement is so powerful that they could burn down cities, murder people. Again, remember, it was Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Let me just paint a story. This is one incident. One. They set up their own little utopia, the Summer of Love in Seattle, called Chaz, or the Chop Zone, whatever you want to call it. It was the Summer of Love. That's what the Democratic mayor said. They set up checkpoints. They had armed guards and police that they started themselves. Within 2 weeks, the Black Lives Matter Antifa armed guards put 30-something bullets into a car driven by 2 African-American adolescents, a 16 and a 14-year-old, I believe. And then on audio, after they put all those bullets in the car, you could hear them say, he's still breathing, and then put 3 more bullets into one of their heads, killing them. Would any of their names on NFL players' helmets? Did you hear Black Lives Matter condemning that, or Antifa? Was there an outrage by that? Were people upset about the Black Lives Matter cops executing young African Americans like that? We could hear the audio. Now, you say what you want about Breonna Taylor or Jacob Blake or George Floyd. The Blake incident, I'm not so sure about. Breonna Taylor, I didn't see video or anything like that, but I'm hugely against no-knock warrants. And I think that something needs to change with that. George Floyd, you've heard my opinion on. That doesn't mean that you can't criticize those incidents, but that's not just, oh, he's still breathing, let's put 3 more bullets in their head. Where's all your friends on the left that are freaking out about institutional rape? Where are they? That's what Black Lives Matter did. That organization, Black Lives Matter and Antifa, that did that, or that set the conditions for that to be done, not only did they get away with it, but you are a racist if you don't support them. That's power that you can't believe. And again, I was one of the first people I said that said the real danger with Antifa and Black Lives Matter is that there is institutional power backing them. That's exactly what we see happening. You go ahead, for whatever reason you have. Maybe you didn't get the extra pepperoni you wanted on your pizza last night delivered to you. So go ahead and go burn down the pizza store and see what happens to you. You think your cause is justified. I made sure no one was in the pizza store. I'm very upset about them stiffing me on pepperoni. Go ahead, see if they're like, okay, $300 bail, you're out the door. Don't do it again. See if that's the treatment you get. But if you say you did it because Black Lives Matter, oh, well, then that's different. Yeah, okay. Yeah. It was a noble, peaceful fire. That's the real power. That's why it won't end. And the reason that I'm not surprised that we see police officers now being shot and it being escalated is, I said this way back when we were having this conversation of, is it okay to punch a Nazi? This wasn't extreme people saying this. This was mainstream academia, mainstream media people, and politicians. Is it okay to use physical violence against Nazis? I said no. How is this even a conversation? I had the same conversation in debate, by the way. This is how it went in debate. There was a team that was throwing pies in people's face. And then they would read a piece of evidence that said, like, the satirical nature of throwing a pie in a politician's face, blah, 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 blah. And I said, no, you don't have the right to lay your hands on me in a violent way. I don't care if you think it's a joke. You don't have the right to do that. Period. End of discussion. There is no world where you could say, yes, but it was to make some sort of argument. No, you don't have the right to engage in violence like that. Period. No, you do not have the... You don't think that I've heard things that I consider incredibly offensive? I've been told to kill myself for being white. I've been told that all white people will be murdered. In debate rounds. Was I justified to use violence back? Hey, thanks, Frank. My friend Let's Be Frank again donates $10 on YouTube. All donations are welcome, especially since I'm quitting one of my jobs. Thank you so much. Please check out Let's Be Frank on YouTube. It's going to be 10 o'clock tonight, right, Frank? Him and the great Sarah Courier are going to be doing a show, so check that out at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight. What's up, Drone Tech? Thanks for being here. I might be doing Drone Tech's show at 8 briefly. I do have some paperwork and stuff to get done, but thanks for being here, Drone Tech, as well. Drone Tech, thanks for the donation of $5. If you're donating on Twitch or DLive, I can't see, but just give me a holler in the chat, and I'll shout you out. So thank you, everyone. So... Nazis say horrible things. I argue with anyone who's followed my channel recently. What happened is I secretly suspect that many times it's only on Twitch and once in a while on DLive. I'll get what I would consider like a white nationalist will come on. I secretly believe they're probably left-wing people trolling me because the way what they're trying to do is saying like, yeah, man, we totally agree with you. That's why we need a white country. They want me to slip up so that then all the left-wingers that I constantly beat up on in debates, they're watching on Twitch and they'll say, oh, we saw you side with the white nationalists. That's what I think is probably happening, but they could just be white nationalists. Either way, it's unequivocal. I have no love for them. I find them to be repulsive. I think racial supremacy is one of the scourges of our lifetime. I don't care if you're black and a racial supremacist, if you're white and a racial supremacist, if you're Asian, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. I hate identity politics and I despise, with a passion, racial superiority complexes. So, you go ahead. If you're on the left and you think you're going to trip me up with it, go ahead. You're not, because it's not who I am. Regardless, I despise that idea. So I'm not here saying, oh, I like Nazis. They're disgusting. However, just because someone's saying something disgusting does not give you the right to use violence against them. It does not. Why? One, it's just immoral in its own right. Second, you have the right to use violence to defend yourself. So if that person is not talking hypothetically about, I think this country should just be for people that look like me, and I think you should be jailed or kicked out, That's not violence. Once they come to physically remove you, then you have the right to defend yourself with violence. If they throw a punch at you, you have the right to defend yourself. But you don't have the right to proactively use violence because you don't like the words someone is saying. Period. Thank you, Michelle. New subscriber here, enjoying the channel. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate it. Ding Dong Dumpling says, how goes the perpetual struggle? Pretty good. I mean, it's a shame that the country's falling apart, but I've never been happier. I'm going to be a dad, so I'm actually in a good mood. Jojo throwing in money. My brother, you shouldn't be donating to me. You could come help me paint the baby's room, Jojo. You don't have to. So that's morally why it's unjustified. But then there's another reason, because here's what ends up happening, predictably, and I'm not a genius. Again, many people said this. Once you say it's okay to punch a Nazi, it's a short step from saying, oh, and everyone I disagree with is Nazis. That's exactly what Antifa says. So Antifa, both when it started in the 30s and now, they just changed the word fascism to mean anything they want. Basically, capitalism is fascism. Scott Adams talked about this in his show today. Ask an Antifa, ask someone who claims to be an Antifa, is there a possible capitalist society that you feel is not fascistic? And the next time I talk to an Antifa person, I'll ask them that. Do I think fatherhood will alter my worldview? Maybe. I hope not, because I like to think that my worldview is grounded, but certainly I think it probably will. I'm not naive. Hopefully more love and cuddles, yeah. Thank you for the congratulations. So this is exactly what we see happening. So we had this conversation. Is it okay to punch a Nazi? Yeah. And then we had Rick Wilson and Anderson Cooper and a bunch of people saying Trump supporters are Nazis. They're 10-tooth rubes. They're all racist. They're voting against the Brown Horde. ICE agents are literal Nazis. ICE facilities are concentration camps. The police are all systemically racist. And when you push back against this, they double down, right? And I would be like, whoa. You know, this violence, are you sure about this? I think this is a bad idea. And this is what 95% of the people I had this discussion with, embracing the violence, would say. They'd say, oh, so if you had a chance to go back and stop Hitler, you wouldn't do it? They don't understand. Or they'll say, what about the revolution? The Revolutionary War? If you think burning down inner city black neighborhoods and their businesses is the same as the Revolutionary War, you have a serious problem. Yes, of course, there are times when a revolution is justified, but you better be damn sure that you've exhausted all other options and it's correct. Because 99.9% of the time people feel justified in using violence when it comes for political reasons, they're not. They're not justified. And so what you see happening is, think about that. What do you think the predictable result of the Democrats doing this? Now, let me back up here and say, when a Bernie supporter shot Steve Scalise and shot all of those Republicans on the ball field, you can check my post on Above Top Secret and other places. I was adamant that I did not blame Bernie Sanders. I said, as voraciously as I could, I said, what the hell, I can't even pronounce, trying to use big words, as bigly as I could. How about that? I said, all political movements will have extremists in them. And you shouldn't judge a movement because a few fringe people take things too far. Now, what I did criticize Bernie for was his hypocrisy, right? Because Bernie, when Congressman Gifford got shot, fundraised off that shooting and said that it was because of Republican rhetoric and that it wasn't safe to walk down the street as a Democrat. That's what Bernie said. But then one of his supporters shoot up Republicans. He didn't say this is because of Democrat rhetoric and it's not safe to be a Republican. He said, oh, I condemn all violence. And then in Charlottesville, when Trump said, I condemn both sides, Bernie said, this is outrageous. It's just the right wing that must be condemned. Right? So that I did call Bernie out. But I understand. And look, I'm telling you right now, this is not a position that I'm going to waver from. You know, let's say there's a local election and it's Republican versus Democrat, and some fan of the Democrat goes out and shoots a bunch of people. That doesn't automatically mean, oh, well, that Democrat's responsible. No, every person, Ron Paul was my favorite politician. I'm sure there are Ron Paul nutbags that would be willing to engage in violence. That doesn't mean that it's Ron Paul's fault. However, when you see consistently this scale of violence that's occurring, and it being fed by so many people at the core of a party, the Democratic Party, then it's time to say blame needs to be placed. It's no longer fringe when, let me put it this way, the Princeton article that supposedly debunked the violent riots, it said that only 7% of the locations that had protests became violent. Okay, if 7 out of 100 of your supporters are violent, or of your rallies result in violence, that's a huge freaking problem. That's an enormous problem. What do you think the percentage was of a movement that was demonized by the media? Like, I don't know, the Tea Party. What do you think the percentage of the thousands upon thousands of Tea Party rallies, how many of them do you think resulted in burning down buildings? Maybe one, if, I don't remember hearing of it, but possibly. They would have went nuts. The media would have went nuts. So their argument is, well, out of thousands, only 220-something locations have had violence. That's locations. So that doesn't count like the 100-something nights of violence in Portland. That just counts as one location. What do you think people are going to do? People aren't shooting cops and burning down buildings in spite of the message of the Democratic Party. People are doing it because of the message of the Democratic Party. Because if you hold these two beliefs in your head, hey, what if I could have stopped Hitler? I would have done it. I need to do something. And our country's systemically racist. Our police officers are systemically racist. You've basically not just given yourself the moral justification to use violence against the police and against other people in this country. You've almost made it morally unjustified to not use violence. Because that's how, when you talk to, go ahead and ask someone. When you were having this debate, is it okay to punch a Nazi? No, it's not okay. Oh, so you wouldn't have stopped Hitler? They're making a moral implication at you. How immoral would you have to be to live in the time of Hitler and not use violence to stop him? So it's not just saying, well, we're morally justified in fighting the systemically racist police. They're saying it would be immoral to not use violence to fight them. Hence the motto, silence is violence. That's what they're trying to tell you. And when you hear political terrorists announcing exactly what they think, you should listen to them. What did you expect to have? It is a central tenet of Joe Biden's platform that he talked about at the Democrat convention and has talked about numerous times since, that Trump said Nazis were good people. That's a lie. I talked about this 3 weeks ago. I had someone on Twitch say, oh, just because you say it's a lie doesn't mean it's a lie. I said, stick around, person. We went painstakingly through all 3 of Donald Trump's speeches after Charlottesville. In all 3 of them, he condemned racism, bigotry, things like that. In the first speech, he didn't say specifically the KKK, but he said, we all need to come together. We should, race doesn't matter. Racial bigotry is heinous. This act of bigotry needs to be challenged. We need to come together as Americans. The second speech, he specifically, because that wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for the media. Remember? Oh no, he has to call out the organizations by name. He has to say KKK and neo-Nazi. Now juxtapose that to when an Antifa person just shot and killed a Trump supporter, executed him. Did the media say Joe Biden must condemn Antifa? Did they do that? No, they didn't. They let Joe Biden say, all violence is bad on all sides, just like Trump did. Almost the same cookie cutter speech, but Biden's speech was great. It was bringing Americans together. Trump's speech was, oh my God, he's dog whistling to Nazis. So the second speech, Trump again condemns the bigotry, and he specifically uses the KKK and Nazis and says that they're evil. Then the third speech, he's trying to give a speech on economic development and things like that, and they just keep screaming at him, the media, why did it take you so long to condemn the KKK? Why did it take you so long to condemn Nazis? And I've explained at great length what was going on. Trump saw the writing on the wall, just like me and thousands of other people, that there were horrible people on both sides. That Antifa is a domestic terror group, and that the media was giving them a pass because they looked at the Unite the Right, like the Richard Spencer type crowd, and said, oh, that crowd's evil, so therefore the other side must be good. They were not good. They showed up armed for conflict. They're racial supremacists and Marxists that are willing to use political violence. They're political terrorists. That's what they are. And so Trump was trying to say, look, I understand there were good people on both sides, but there were bad people on both sides too. Now, the focus got put on the good people argument. Who could be a good person that was standing with Richard Spencer's group? Well, first off, wouldn't that same argument apply to the Black Lives Matter group? So, for example, in Provo, Washington, a couple months ago, Black Lives Matter is blocking a car. Black Lives Matter person pulls out gun, shoots person driving car drives away. Did the rest of the Black Lives Matter people go, oh my God, you just shot someone, police? No, they kept right on cheering and marching. Now, what good person could have been in that crowd? What good person could be in a Black Lives Matter crowd as they're burning down buildings? But I hear all the time, well, they're there for a different reason. That doesn't mean that they're bad. Well, then why couldn't it have been true in the Unite the Right rally? And in addition to that, I used the New York Times itself to quote several people that were like, we didn't know nothing about Nazis. We came because we don't want to see our past erased. We support the standing of these statues. We despise the Nazis and stuff. That's not why we were there. So yes, there were good people. But Trump specifically, when he says there are good people on both sides, then says, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the KKK, they're despicable and should be condemned. That's a central core. That is a lie. That's been perpetuated by 90% of our media, that Trump said that Nazis were good people. It's a lie. It's the exact opposite of the truth. They selectively edited, they took out the portion, they left out the first two speeches, and then they took out the portion in the third speech where he said, I'm not talking about Nazis and KKK, they're clearly bad people. Now, what would you do if you're someone who's only getting informed through CNN or the New York Times? And you're like, well, yeah, I think if I was around when Hitler was there, I would have used violence to stop them. And my president just said Nazis are good people. What do you think's going to happen? The media knows they're full of it. The Democrats know they're full of it. They're playing a political game for political power. But their followers don't know that. They say, oh my God, yes, I need to use violence to stop this Nazi, Donald Trump. And if you support a Nazi, then you must be a Nazi. And again, on the website Above Top Secret, that was kind of my favorite political website, I respected left-wing members there. I watched say, yes, a time will come where we need to kill all Trump supporters. If it means stopping Donald Trump from getting power, yes, we'll need to kill Trump supporters. A friend of mine in real life, just 3 days ago, posted on Facebook, I hope that Trump supporters are all murdered or get COVID so that they can't go out and vote. This is considered acceptable. And can you blame them for thinking that? If you think that you need to use violence to punch a Nazi, and if you believe the media that Trump's a Nazi or a racist, and the cops are racist, what do you think's going to happen? Someone says it sounds a bit extreme. We should all sit down and have a cup of tea. Well, listen, I don't disagree. Again, you won't hear me. I debate people whose positions I find repugnant all the time. I'm good friends with people whose positions I find repugnant. I don't go out of my way to be hateful to them. I don't. I try to listen to them. I might get heated when we're talking about the issue. But I don't smear them as people. I don't wish death upon them. The problem is that we can see it's almost universal that that sort of hatred is coming from one side. And they feel morally justified in doing it. And they're backed by all of these institutions of power. Show me one councilman when Charlottesville happened. One councilman, one representative, one senator, one Republican or right-leaning media personality. Show me one. Someone in college, a professor, that was like, yeah, this is the chicken, yeah. Heather Heyer deserved to die. This is a good thing. Start of a revolution. Show me one. Did you see a bunch of people show up at the hospital and try to block it so Heather Heyer's ambulance couldn't get in, chanting that they hoped she died? Did you see that? Or did you see a bunch of people, 700 or so, at that rally start cheering, we got one of the fascists today, we got one of those scumbags today, and all start cheering like they did when they shot Jay Danielson in Portland? Ding Dong says, well, the Republicans are in power, aren't they? Are they? They have the presidency and the Senate. They don't have the House. But again, that's just political power. This argument makes no sense to me. So that's like saying, let's say that a secular government gets elected in Iran, right? And it's great. And it starts giving rights to women, and it stops with like executing people that are gay or disabled, and it stops executing journalists. It's a good, it's still a growing government, but a good government. But a bunch of people that followed the former Iranian regime decide they're going to start firebombing people. Would your argument be, oh, well, the secular government's in charge, and look at how many people are dying on the street. Might as well go back to the old government. No, you don't vote for terrorists or not blame the terrorists just because they don't have political power. So let's go to that, and Smackaroo on Twitch, that's exactly the point. And this is the point that I've made with people, including one of my best friends who's not an extreme leftist, who has a problem with these riots and things. But I had this conversation. If you follow me on my channel, I talked about this a lot. Basically, the conversation went something like this. I'm someone who fancies myself kind of a civil libertarian, though labels are difficult. But I don't like overwhelming police force. I don't want to see troops on the streets and things like that. I don't want to see that. So go back to the start of these riots, particularly in places like Minneapolis, places like New York City. So New York City specifically, where it has the largest domestic police force of any city in the world, yet they just let the city be overtaken. And the people that wanted to burn down were basically allowed to do so unimpeded, were not arrested, and if they were, almost all of them were immediately released, despite millions of dollars of destruction. And let me take a break real quick. That's my work phone. Be right back. Sorry. This is work stuff. So I'll talk to you a little more about my work. But transitioning, I do, for those of you who don't know, I sell life insurance. If you need life insurance, please get in touch with me. But the job I've been doing for 9 years is home health care with people with developmental disabilities. And I've basically been with one person predominantly through that one client. And leaving is probably one of the top 3 hardest things that I've ever done, because at this point, you know, most weeks I spend at least half my week with this person, and it's going to be rough to leave. So I had to make some calls about that. So sorry about that. But I will talk to you guys more when I'm done with that. Obviously, there's private things that I'm not going to talk about, like people's names and specific issues. But if you do healthcare, you get really attached to the people you work with. And I think that it's ridiculous how little we pay, not just me, but healthcare workers in general. But a lot of good people stick around because they're so attached to the people that they take care of that the companies know they can take advantage of you. Well, I'm someone in my life that I don't really care about money. You know, my mom used to joke all the time. Like, money meant nothing to me. If I paid my bills, and, you know, you could tell I wasn't missing many meals. I didn't care. I didn't care if I drove a piece of crap car, if it was all paid up and everything. But now that I'm having a kid, it's different. So I came to the decision where I have a master's degree that I'm not using. I need to be making more than $15 an hour. So, but anyways, let's go. I don't know exactly where I was. So what we'll do is we'll go to some of the tweets I've saved. I might be switching over to go on my buddy Drone Tech's channel here at 8 o'clock. So we'll go until at least then. So we were talking kind of about how it's not surprising that people, if they think it's okay to use violence and they think that Trump and his supporters or cops are all systemically racist or Nazis, it's not surprised to then see violence being used against them. So I'm going to show some videos here. And for those of you who don't know, until I get back to a more set schedule, I just kind of bookmark tweets that I think are interesting and then in random order, just chronological order from when I saw them. So we'll see what they're about, and we'll just start and go till 8. So let's do it. I'm going to get my earplug in. Let me know if the sound's not working. What's up, Grimlock Thievin? Who else do I see? Mudmaster, thank you. Achilles. Anyone else I'm missing? Thank you to everyone listening. So, sorry about that little break there, but, you know, that stuff's important. So, okay. Let me know if you can't hear this, but anyways, we'll go. This is a video you probably saw. This was someone who witnessed firsthand the 2 cops in LA being shot, and this was his reaction.
Compton. Nigga just aired the police out, nigga. They just aired the police out, nigga. It go up in Compton. Them niggas just got aired out, cuz. They just bust on them niggas, cuz. That's crazy. Damn. Oh, it goes down in Compton. Oh, they just got bust off. That nigga on a knee. Damn. Police just got aired out, nigga.
That's enough. You get the idea. You notice you heard another one yelling, "No justice, no peace." Now think about... My first reaction is, how evil is that? That was my first reaction. But then, again, I recommend watching Scott Adams. I really like him. I don't agree with everything he says, but he thinks in such a different way. It really helps me think about things. And one of the things he said, which he's absolutely right, the more I think about it, is this isn't evil. This isn't a sociopath or a psycho. That's not who that guy and the guy yelling "No justice, no peace" are. Those are people that believe Joe Biden. That's who they are. Those are people that believe Kamala Harris. Those are people that believe critical race theory in colleges. That's it. They're not abnormal people in the sense that they have listened to people in positions of authority and they've believed them. That's it. Now, not everyone's going to hear that and personally, even if you agree with Black Lives Matter, personally witness 2 cops get shot and start celebrating like that. But a lot will. Because they believe. How else could you see? What other explanations could it be that you're a psychopath, or that you legitimately believe that violence is justified to fight systemic racists and all cops are systemically racist? That's the message of the Democratic Party. That's the prevailing message in our institutions right now. That's the prevailing thing being taught in the humanities right now in college campuses. That's what's been being told to inner city black communities for the past 30 years, if not longer. They grew up on songs like Cop Killer, Ice-T. Why would they be upset? It doesn't even mean that they're an immoral person. That action from that guy right there is incredibly immoral. But it's understandable. If he truly believes that cops are all racist out to murder him, why wouldn't he celebrate? Wouldn't you celebrate? What's up, Thievin? Pure ignorance. Thank you for the donation for $5. I've said it for years. If I know, look, make no mistake about it. I don't have to virtue say. I don't care about it. I will tell you this. If I grew up in the inner city black community and I was in a single parent household and I was told from the day I was born that this country is racist, that no matter what I do, I'll never achieve, that law enforcement is racist, that everyone's out to get me, that every failure in my life isn't because of my own shortcomings, it's because this entire country and everyone in it, at least of a certain skin color, are racist and hate me, I know that I wouldn't have achieved. I know that. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still hold people personally accountable. Of course we should. But it's understandable. We've set as a society, and when I say we, I mean all of us. I mean myself included. Because I could have pushed back harder. I could have been more effective. Yeah, I did more than most because I saw it for so long when I entered the debate community. I saw critical race theory in its purest form early in 2003 and onwards. And I talked to people about how insane it was and how evil and vindictive it was and how racist it was. But we didn't do enough as a society. And so now this is what we see. There are people that watch it. Again, good people I know that are good people are saying things like, I hope all Trump supporters die. I hope those cops die. Pigs anyways. Well, let's go on. Next. Oops, did I do that right? Sorry. This was going viral, and I think it's worth listening. Remember, last night a 6-year-old boy begged God to save his police officer mother's life. Today, the NFL will honor the organization that yelled, "Hope they die," outside the mother's hospital. Now, I understand the pushback. Oh, thank you so much, Moonglow, for Huggy Stock Up Now. Love the channel. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Do I agree who's not loud enough? The far right? It depends on what you mean by far right. I have no love for... To me, the far right and this far left are all like the horseshoe theory, two sides of the same coin. So I would consider, in my interpretation of the far right, I think that means like Richard Spencer type people. No, they need to shut up too. Who needs to speak up is more of like the right, the centrist right. In fact, I argue all the time that actually the centrist left is more effective against the extreme left than the centrist right. So people like Brett and Eric Weinstein, Joe Rogan, Sam Harris, those people are more effective at calling out this garbage critical race theory, and all of them hate Trump. They're all left-wingers. Then you have former left-wingers like Dave Rubin. But where is it? For example, name me a Republican politician other than, there's a handful. You got Trump, obviously. And then maybe like Gates and a couple others. Where's my congressman that I like? Where's he? He can't even be bothered to say that the district he represents isn't systemically racist. Our governor, Tom Wolf, came out and said that there's 2 Pennsylvanias, one for white people and one for people of color. And my representative couldn't speak up and say, that's garbage. Couldn't even say that. So certainly the right needs to speak up more, but I have no love for the extreme, like, racial right at all, if that's what you're asking me. But yeah, now let me play devil's advocate here. They would say, well, just because some Black Lives Matter showed up and tried to stop these ambulances from getting in and said we hope they die, that doesn't represent all Black Lives Matter. But how many times are we willing to say that? Again, the same thing could be said of extremist Islam. Now, let me be quite clear. I have at least 2 friends that are Muslims that are 2 of the greatest people I know. They deplore the violence. They actively speak out about the violence. They want to be reformers within the Islamic community. I've told you one of the most disgusting stories I heard in this country that infuriated me was when I saw a first-generation immigrant that came to the United States because he enjoyed our freedoms, came here legally, and started a chicken shop in New York City. Then his son got radicalized, and his son detonated a bomb in New York City. I don't know if you remember this, it was a couple years ago, and it was actually captured on film, like a subway camera or something captured it. No one died, but the son was arrested. Then a bunch of scumbags went after the dad, and were like, oh, it was your son, get out of here, we don't want you here either. Then it came out that the dad was the one who called the FBI on his own son before the bombing and afterwards because he saw that his son was being radicalized. Yet our worthless FBI couldn't do anything to stop him. Now, why should that guy who's Muslim, who did everything right, came here to do the right thing, who did something I probably couldn't do, call the authorities on my own son? But he did it because he loved this country so much and saw the extremism. Why is he being attacked? But the problem with Islam is this. It's not that there aren't good Islamic people. Of course there are. The problem is that most studies show that about 5% of them are terrorists. But that's not even the real problem. The problem's the next 20% that agree with the terrorism. They personally won't strap the bomb on, but they'll cheer it on. So when you're talking about a religion of billions of people, that's hundreds of millions of people that are willing to defend terrorism. That's the problem. The same thing's true of Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Not every Black Lives Matter person's going to strap a gun on and shoot police officers, but how many will cheer it on? And then, how many of the remaining will actively condemn it? When someone, would you say, I'm at work, so you, sorry if I'm missing some of the chat. Yeah, I'm not getting into the Islam thing. Certainly, I would agree with a lot of you on what happens with political Islam and the problems with that. Certainly. But I'm just making the point that the point is, it doesn't take a huge percentage of a movement that's willing to engage in violence for it to become a huge problem. Especially if there's a large portion that is also willing to defend or cover up for that violence. And that's exactly what we see with Black Lives Matter. Again, where was Black Lives Matter when the Chaz in the Chop Zone executed a 16-year-old African-American boy? Where were they? Were they marching for justice for him? Was it on Anderson Cooper's show and Jake Tapper's show? Was it on the New York Times? Were they protesting for that? They didn't care. They didn't care at all. Right, Mirage. There's a difference between protest, which again, I think Black Lives Matter is a domestic terrorist organization the way that it's ran. Not everyone that's in it's a domestic terrorist. I don't want someone, if they put on Facebook, I support Black Lives Matter, to all of a sudden have the police investigating them. That's not what I'm saying. The people that are running that movement, and I understand, it's not set up like a normal organization where there's 1 or 2 people at the top, but the people that are controlling culturally the direction of it are pushing for things like this to occur. They're Marxists. They're pushing for the destruction of this country. That's what they're doing. They like the riots. They like the violence. And they should be condemned as such. I didn't have a problem, though, despite despising Black Lives Matter. My local town had a BLM protest, completely peaceful. By the way, that's why I disagreed with Carlos on the radio show 2 weeks ago. Carlos is like, I don't believe that that 93% of Black Lives Matter protests have been peaceful. I do. I actually believe that. Because there are little towns like mine all throughout this country that had 50, 60 people show up and hold candles and say Black Lives Matter. And there was no violence. That happened all over the place. The problem is, that's like saying the majority of KKK rallies don't result in violence. Also true. And when they do, so does that mean Charlottesville wasn't a big deal? And again, what seems ridiculous to me is, consider the fact that last year we had 14 unarmed blacks shot and killed by police. 14. Now, in the same year, there were 7,000 blacks that were killed in black-on-black homicide. Now, even if we take that all 14 of these unarmed blacks that were shot were unjustified shoots, which is not the case, at least with a couple of them, but even if we accept they were for the sake of argument, we're talking about 14. How many interactions between regular people and law enforcement do you think there are a year? We have roughly 800,000 law enforcement in this country. Presumably each of them have at least one interaction per day when they're working. Heck, let's just say 500,000. This is a low number. Let's say 500,000 law enforcement interactions with civilians a day. And you're talking about 14? But you're right. I do agree with this. Any heinous action done by police, regardless of skin color, is worth scrutiny, and it's newsworthy. However, how can the same person that says, well, only 7% of Black Lives Matter protests become riots, only 7%, so it's not newsworthy. But George Floyd, that anomaly, the 1 out of 500,000 interactions that day, that's newsworthy. You can't engage in both of those thinking simultaneously. I would argue both are newsworthy. And Smackaroo, I agree. Deaths by police are almost directly related to violent crime rates in communities. Now, again, that doesn't mean we shouldn't look at why that violent crime is occurring in those communities. Are there things we could be doing to lower violent crime, like lowering poverty rates or lowering a culture, fighting back culturally against a culture that glorifies violence and things like that? Certainly, there are all sorts of things we could be doing. We should be working to solve all these problems. I don't shy away from that. So Ding Dong Dumpling says, is it blacks themselves? Is it economic conditions or a racist system? It could be a combination of all three. I've yet to see evidence of the racist system. I don't see that. And even if you said that the system was racist, right? So, and I've gone through all of it. Okay. Let's take a step back. So we know that there is a problem with violence, particularly in inner city communities where black people tend to live, where in these communities, there's a disproportionate number of black people that tend to live there. The numbers that talk about the violence don't really look as stark when you're talking about black people that live in suburbs or in rural areas. It's not the amount of violence that you see in these inner city areas. So the question is, why is this violence occurring there? And there's a lot of, I'm not perfect, I don't know. I'm willing to hear people tell me why it could be systemic racism. I've brought people on in good faith. I read an article today from The Root that said that a Harvard judge commissioned a study and they found out that it's systemic racism. But I don't see proof in that study. It's just proof that they say, well, we couldn't pinpoint a reason, so therefore we say it's racism. But that's not proving that it's racism. There could be all sorts of factors, cultural factors, economic factors, population density factors, things like that. But it could be racism, could be part of it. But let me ask you this then, to anyone who's listening and says, oh, well, if the numbers are disproportional, it proves racism. That seems to be what this study is suggesting. So, for example, if blacks are 10% more likely to be pulled over than whites, that proves racism. If they're 10% more likely to be convicted, if they're 10% more likely to get a longer sentence, etc., that proves racism. If that's the case, and the discrepancy between whites and blacks in law enforcement prove that we have a systemically racist society, then what would you say that the numbers are even starker when we talk about the difference between men and women? So if the difference between blacks and whites are something like 10%, blacks are more likely to be pulled over. It's like 25% with whites or with men to women. 25% more likely to get a longer sentence. Our legal system is harsher on men compared to women than it is blacks compared to whites. So does that mean we have a bigoted racial or a bigoted misandrist country? No, because the intersectionalists on the left say we live in a patriarchy that is racist. So the system's abusive to women and abusive to blacks. But how can that be? If we just say, well, if cops are more involved and if law enforcement is more heavily scrutinizing the black community, it proves they're racist. Well, they're certainly even more than that heavily scrutinizing men. So doesn't that prove bigotry against men? Well, no, that's different. Hey, Drone Tech, before you leave, man, do you want me to... What's up, Jeff? Nice to hear from you, man. Drone Tech, if you want me to do your show, I'm willing to come on at 8, man. Just give me a holler. I don't know how you want to do it, but I got my phone. I'll text you real quick. Sorry about this, everyone. Anyways. Yeah, thanks for being here, Drone Tech. Everything is well, Jeff. Thanks for being here, man. So the point is this. You can't just look at a data set and say, oh, this proves racism or it proves bigotry. What you do is you're like, what are the reasons that that data set is that way? So, for example, when I talk to someone and I'm like, okay, what do you think about the fact that men are 30% more likely to be arrested than women? Most of the time, people will say, well, that's because men commit more crime. And that's true. It's absolutely true. And we can see that, I would articulate that a lot of that's genetic, because men tend to be more aggressive than women. And people that end up getting lengthy prison sentences tend to be the most aggressive people. So it would make sense that that would disproportionately be men. Something like 90% of people in federal prison are men. Makes sense. But it's not just genetics. There's all sorts of other reasons that it could be. But I'm not so sure that I could just say, oh, it's sexism against men. That could be part of it. But it's a large, complicated situation. Why wouldn't the same be true racially? Now, I'm not one to jump on this genetic argument, because the problem with the race realism genetic argument is this. How do we know that culturally and that economically that we haven't created the conditions for there to be genetic differences between people that live in these inner cities and elsewhere? I don't know. And I hesitate to get into genetic arguments because it's so easy to encourage racists to say, oh, my race is superior. So I focus more on what are the economic reasons? Are there possible racist reasons? Are there possible cultural reasons? But we can't even get to that level of the discussion because instead we've defaulted to it's systemic racism by the police. And again, I've talked about this on the show over and over. This is the best example I have. When George Floyd happened, everyone was outraged. 95% of people were outraged. I was outraged. And let me be clear on my stance on George Floyd in case anyone's wondering. I think that there's substantial evidence that he probably died as a result of a heart attack through his drug overdose. And there's probably a good chance he would have died had he not had his head being kneeled on. However, that doesn't mean that that officer didn't commit a crime. Regardless of the circumstance of George Floyd ingesting drugs, what that officer did was a crime, in my opinion, and he should be charged with it. I don't think it's first-degree murder, but he should be charged. And it was heinous, and it was difficult to watch. I wrestled a long time ago. I've never had someone put their knee in the back of my head, but I've been manhandled to the ground. It sucks. And to have someone's knee in the back of your head for like 8 minutes it's outrageous. I don't care what anybody says. Now, does that mean George Floyd wasn't a scumbag? No, he seems to be a scumbag. Does that mean we should glorify him as a saint? Absolutely not. But regardless, that's my take on it. When it happened with George Floyd, right? Most people were outraged. Even right-wingers, left-wingers, most people were outraged. Rush Limbaugh was outraged. So he brought on a noted cultural influencer and someone who speaks for Black Lives Matter, Charlemagne the God. And Charlemagne the God, if you don't know, I think he's a rapper, but also he's been prominent enough to do interviews with presidential candidates, Biden, others. So he's not a nobody. And Rush says, this was heinous. I have a big audience that normally wouldn't listen to someone like you, Charlemagne. But we're here listening now. What can we do to help? And Charlemagne the God says, we need to dismantle the systems of white supremacy. What does that mean? How is that in any way? How do we have any proof that what happened to George Floyd had anything to do with race? In fact, If there was one racial comment ever made by that officer, Derek Chauvin, on Twitter or Facebook, I'm sure we would have seen it by now. There is no evidence it had to do with race. It was a situation of police going overboard. Yet when we make it all about race, what that means is if you misidentify a problem, you can never get a solution. Not only that, but what Black Lives Matter has done is not just misidentified the problem, their solutions actually make the problem worse. So for example, what's happened in places like New York City since we've started defunding the police? Homicides are up 177%. And who are the bulk of those victims? Inner city black people. They want to dismantle the structures of the nuclear family, the Western structure of the nuclear family. So they want more single parents. Who's that hurt the most? Inner city black community. It hurts us all. So that's what misidentifying the problem is. And let me be quite clear. I think that anytime you focus on race like this, without definitive proof that race is the reason, it is incredibly harmful. However, having said that, I don't begrudge people coming together based on their race and wanting advocacy. I do the same thing in a different way. It's not race-based, but I think that people where I'm from, like rural Pennsylvania, or not even rural, but people that are just like 9-to-5 workers, they don't really have a voice. And so I say I would like to speak up for those type of people that don't really get a chance to speak much, that aren't heard much. If I'm going to group a selective group of people that I identify with, who the hell would I be to judge another group doing the same thing? So I don't. I say that's fine. I think it's a mistake to focus on race. I think it makes things worse, but you have every right to do it. And I want to help. I do. Again, I go back to, I ran for Congress. I volunteered, was offered a job with the Trump campaign in Pennsylvania. Both times I asked prominent Republicans in the background, not politicians. I said, what are we doing to reach out to groups that traditionally don't vote Republican? Like young people, like single mothers, like inner city blacks. They said, oh, we just go after our base. We go after low-hanging fruit. To which I say, then I don't blame blacks for predominantly voting Democrat. Why would you vote for someone who's unwilling to even talk to you? Now, does that mean if I talk to the inner city black community in Philadelphia, they're going to be like, wow, that Rob's great. We're all going to vote for him or vote Republican? Of course not. I wouldn't trust me the first time I'm out there either. But after 4, 6, 8, 10 years of being told, look, this is why we think our platform is best for you, maybe then they would take you serious and say, oh, they care. So I care about problems in all communities. I might not understand the unique problems of different communities, but I care, and I think we should come together to try to solve them. I don't know how this critical race theory garbage and the message of Black Lives Matter, it's making it worse. It's terrible. I don't know how a bunch of white people going into inner city black communities and burning them down helps the black community. And I think you're seeing that bear out. Trump's support amongst black people are going up. He's still not going to get over 50%. But how in this time when the Democrats are blaming Trump, saying that this is his fault, and racial tensions are so high, how in the world is Trump's support amongst blacks going up? Well, it's because, they understand. Go back and watch that Tupac interview from years ago where he's like, I don't get where white people come from. They think that we don't want protected. They think just because these violent thugs live in our community that we like them. We don't. My mom went to bed worried about the same thing your mom went to bed every night worrying about. The safety of her children. They don't want their communities burnt down. The majority of the people doing the rioting and looting are white people. And the only people that benefit from this are the political extremists that want to burn down everything, the looters that want to steal stuff, the Democratic Party that have a vested interest in destroying this country as much as possible to obtain power and blame it on Trump, and racial extremists on both sides. Don't take my word for it. Go listen to Richard Spencer in an interview I saw with him in 2016. They said, what's been the number one drive in recruitment for your organization? These are white nationalists. You know what he said? Black Lives Matter. And you know what the number one drive in recruitment for a group like Black Lives Matter would be? Groups like Richard Spencer's. They thrive off each other. Again, I'm not saying everyone that supports Black Lives Matter is a black supremacist, but there are a lot running that movement that are. So I hope that answered your question. I know it was long. What should we do about Republicans like John Kasich, Never Trumpers, who are willing to vote Democrat to raise taxes, get rid of the Hyde Amendment, and major gun control? Regardless of the president wins or loses, we accept those Kasich Republicans back into the party. If they come back, or tell them to get lost. The people that vote for Kasich are one thing. The people like Kasich are another. The Never Trumpers, these people, look, there is, in my opinion, this is just one person's opinion, I don't see a difference between someone like John Kasich, Mitt Romney, Marco Rubio, Jeff Flake, John McCain, versus Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden. To me, they're all the same. Someone explained to me, let's just look at foreign policy for a minute. In 2003, I got to college, and I made a lot of friends that were against the Iraq War. Well, 2002 I got to college, but by 2003, I had a lot of friends, and I was against the Iraq War. Now, most of them were left-leaning, and I was right-leaning. So I was kind of a Ron Paul, we need to stop these wars. They were left-wing, but remember, there was a big left-wing anti-war movement. And I would go to punk shows, punk against Bush, Bush lied, people died, all of this stuff, right? It was all for it. I thought, yeah, I'm tired of the warmongering. Big anti-war movement. Celebrities, cultural influence behind it, right? Then what happened? In 2008, where'd the anti-war movement go? Did we stop the wars? No, we escalated them. Not only did we escalate, we got new ones. Where was the anti-war movement? You remember? Remember punk bands in 2010, 2011, railing against the president? Bruce Springsteen, remember him railing against the president in the wars, 2011? No, you don't, do you? Because they elected Barack Obama. Explain to me how the foreign policy of Barack Obama was any different than that of George Bush. Anyone? There's marginal differences. Obama willingly gave billions of dollars in pallets of cash to a terrorist organization in Iran that his Secretary of State John Kerry admitted would be used to buy weapons to attack American soldiers. They did that, but so Bush. Bush was arming terrorists as well. What was the difference? Yet why is one given the Nobel Peace Prize and the other considered a warmonger? Oh, but now the left, my same friends that were against the Iraq War, now they're like, well, actually, W. Bush wasn't that bad. And they're against Trump pulling out of the wars. Remember, the knock on Trump was going to be, well, maybe he'll do good economically, but foreign policy will be a disaster. We're going to be involved in all these wars. We have peace breaking out in the Middle East as we speak. It's not even a story. No one cares. Whatever. Let's get back to dropping bombs, says the party of peace, the left. So, to answer your question, John Kasich's a scumbag. He's an establishment scumbag. And I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, if you're one of these people that basically just does whatever it takes to keep the establishment in power, I have no respect for you. Now, the people that voted for him, notice that you'll never hear me denigrate. Well, that's not true. I oftentimes try not to denigrate specific voters. I'll say that the majority of the riders are Biden voters, but I won't say all Biden voters are riders. I won't call them deplorables or things like that. It's strategically a mistake, but you probably just shouldn't do it anyways. So yeah, anyone who voted for John Kasich that says, hey, I would like to come back into the Republican Party, I think we should take any ally we can. I think anyone that voted for Hillary Clinton that wants to vote for Trump, you should be like, yeah. I think people that say, hey, I agree with the Republicans on some issues, but I hate Donald Trump, so I won't vote for him, we should accept that as well. I'm not trying to bet the heck. And when it comes to friends, I have friends on all sides of the political aisle. I don't lose friends because of politics. I try not to, anyways. Sorry. Yeah. That's what I feel on that. So theoretically here at 8, I was supposed to leave. If Drone Tech doesn't get in touch with me, I'll stick around a couple more minutes. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about. We'll leave it at that as far as these news stories go. But, I mean, just real quick, a couple more things. You saw, I assume, the videos of the people surrounding the hospital chanting, "We hope she dies." Here we have, the city of Linwood has responded to their manager's public Instagram post that said chickens have come home to roost after the ambush of 2 deputies. So imagine a Republican if, 2 Democrats were shot or 2 Black Lives Matter were shot, and a Republican city council person comes out and says, "Oh, 2 Black Lives Matter are shot, chickens have come home to roost." Imagine how that would look. You think that'd be a good look? But that's the Democrats. That's a funny story. There's a lot on this, but here's another one I want to do. Protester who celebrated attack on LA deputies helped consult Mayor Garcetti on cultural competency. So this guy, activist Kevin Wharton Price, he celebrated the attack on the deputies and said it was great. It was part of a revolution. He's someone that in the past, Mayor Garcetti in LA has relied on for cultural competency. These are the people in charge of this movement. And they're not shy about it. They've been talking like this for years. Oh, see you, Brady. There's no shyness about this at all. This is who they are. So, I mean, it's just... Maybe the most underrated thing Trump's done was ban critical race theory from being taught at federal agencies. We need to... Look, I got made fun of... What's her name? Caitlin Bennett, gun girl, right? I did a video 5-6 months ago when she was surrounded, mobbed, chased off campus, and I said, time to defund the universities now! Not next week, now! Our tax dollars should not be going to places where people aren't allowed on campus if they hold conservative views. That is ridiculous, antithetical to everything universities are supposed to stand for, and an outrageous abuse of our tax dollars. We should not be training terrorists to destroy this country with our tax dollars. And that's what these universities are. Now, I'm not saying defund them all right now. What I'm saying is any university that refuses to allow their security to stop people mobbing and harassing a conservative speaker or attacking people that are conservatives ought to immediately have all federal funds immediately revoked, period. Then we need to start working on legislations to defund universities anyways. What's up, Paul? Thanks, man. He says, $5 donation. Keep telling the truth. The Dems are crazy and the NPCs just follow them. Vote Trump. Love the show. Thank you. Oh, thank you. A bunch of you are here because Let's Be Frank sent you an hour ago. Thank you so much. Let's Be Frank's one of my favorite people on here. Different stylistically to me, but we agree probably on 90% of stuff. Fantastic guy. For those of you that would like, Let's Be Frank's going to be doing a show at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find his show, just go on YouTube, type Let's Be Frank. In fact, I could probably bring up a link. Let's see if I can do that. But it's just, if you can't read the link for whatever reason, it's just like it sounds. Let's Be Frank. And he's going to be doing a show at 10 p.m. Eastern. He has a fantastic show. He's one of my favorite people on YouTube. And he's going to be joined by Sarah Corrier, who's one of my favorite people also. So let me put, if you can read in the chat, you'll see the message there. Hopefully it comes up for YouTube. All right, it worked for once. So yeah, check that out. But he's a great guy, and he's really tried to help me with my channel, which is incredibly nice of him. I really appreciate it. So yeah, thanks, David, for letting me know that. Yeah, I think you'll really like his show. It's worth checking out. Also, before I go here, if I could remind you, if you're on YouTube watching me, please consider following me on DLive. I'd prefer DLive under any platform. My handle there is just Normal America. So go to DLive.tv and search Normal America, and you'll find me. Or you can find me on Twitch TV as well. Twitch, I like Twitch. I like what's happening there politically, but there's a lot of people that constantly try to get me banned. So we'll see how long that lasts. YouTube, I'll probably be banned before you know it. So the idea, Joe, was I was supposed to do a pre-show with Drone Tech from 8 to 8:30 before the town hall. But I don't have cable, and I could watch it in my computer, but I elected to do this. I'll probably have it on in the background, but I have a lot of paperwork to do. So, all right, I'm going to head off. It looks like Drone Tech's getting in touch with me. Please check out Drone Tech Politics on YouTube. I should be on there in a couple minutes. So Thank you so much, everyone. You guys are the best. I really appreciate all of you. I look forward to seeing you here more in the future. Like I said, once my work situation gets worked out, I'll be happy to do it. So thank you so much, everyone. We'll talk to you all soon. And as always, have a good one.